And the next morning, gosh, I didn't expect to cry in this. Yeah, it was just like a wild weekend that I don't know a lot of people know about that. You're both supposed to be my support system, and like, I felt like I didn't have a support system.
Photographer of the year, let's hear it for Dan Shelley, Shellda Photos.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Shellda Podcast, where this is a special episode. This is my 50th episode, which is something that's really, it's so interesting to think about, right? Because like whenever you start something brand new, you don't think about like the milestones, the 50th episode, the 100th episode. And so now that we're here, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty surreal. And then we're also a few days from after my book launching. So it's just been a really interesting time in my life with all these milestones. And, for the first 49 episodes, I've brought guests on and, they have opened up and shared some insanely vulnerable conversations. And so for this one, my wife, Amanda, hello, welcome to the show.
Hey.
We thought it'd be a cool idea if we flipped the script and you came on and interviewed me because I think a lot of times people are reaching out like, hey, I would love to hear you go into some of the questions. And so full disclaimer, I have no idea what is coming. I typically send my guests questions ahead of time so they know the direction. But for this one specifically, I did not want to know where you were going with this. That was just really important to me. So with that, my intro's out of the way. 50th episode. The host floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to be taking over from this point. Yes, it's super exciting to be host. So I'm going to kick us off as if we're just getting started. So welcome to my podcast. My guest today is a growing legend in paintball. His list of accolades include Pro Media Photographer for the NXL 2025 season, two-time Photographer of the Year winner, one of 4 icons for JT's Elite Clothing Collection, featured in Great American Paintball, as well as the inspiration behind 2 different Hormesis headbands, author of the children's paintball book, A Dragon's Journey to Dynasty, host of the Shellda Podcast, except for today, most recently the author of the chart-climbing autobiography, Finding Me, From Imposter to Icon. He's known for lying down on the field and capturing the emotions of paintball. Ladies and gentlemen, the man behind Shellda Photos, Dan Shelley. Hi, Dan.
Hello, that intro puts all 49 of my other intros to shame. Like I have to step my intro game up now moving forward. You crushed that. Holy cow.
The list of accolades could have gone on, but I figured like I had to kind of keep it a little bit shorter, obviously for the sake of time. But seriously, like this is insane. Your list of accolades within paintball, like you're an icon. And I think it's so interesting because like we'll talk about it and you don't think about it, right? But that's exactly one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here on the podcast today. Thank you for being here. Let me ask you, right? Like 49 episodes that you've done. What is it like being in the seat?
It's challenging. It's gosh, that's not the right word. I think nerve-wracking in a way. Going on the Spick and Span show last week, I was more nervous to be on that than I was to host guests on this podcast. And I think it's because I know what's coming and like I kind of expect the cadence of it, right? So I think when I'm on this side of it, not knowing, and like all eyeballs are on like how I answer it and like what I'm going to answer, it sometimes feels like there's a lot of pressure. And so I think right now that's what I'm feeling of like that nervousness of like, how am I going to mess up? So yeah, it's interesting to be on this side of it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I appreciate you being here. And like, I think what's so interesting is you and I flip those roles. So when I'm in the seat, I'm super nervous. And when you're in that seat, you're super nervous. And like when we flip, we're not. So it's really interesting to like hear that different perspective. Yeah, it's been great kind of curating what I was going to talk about with this interview with you. Because, this is something we've talked about for quite a long time, just in terms of like, I feel like people don't know you. And like, it's interesting because you just wrote this book, right? That's really vulnerable. But I feel like there's this side of you that people don't know. And that kind of gave me where I wanted to go with today, right? And so I'll give you a little bit of context on why I'm interviewing you and what I've come up with. We'd covered in a previous episode, right, about why I paintball. We won't go through it again. But the essence of that account was really about like the person behind the mask, right? You took that concept from Instagram to podcast and have revealed some of the most vulnerable, beautiful, touching stories that like paintball idols share. And it really is like sharing when the mask is off. And I think that's the beauty of this podcast, right? It's moments of inspiration, validation, and moments where like you hear it, people feel less alone. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. You brought that to life, right? Unmasking idols and revealing the relatable person behind. But Dan, as the intro pointed out, and I called out, you're an idol in paintball now. And despite, a beautifully raw and vulnerable book, it's already impacting so many people. We still don't have the Dan Shelley interview on why for paintball. So today, I'm putting you in the interview seat, asking you to take off your mask and share even more vulnerability about the man behind Shellda. You in? You ready?
Sounds scary, but let's go.
Hey, super quick before we go any deeper in this episode, first and foremost, if you haven't seen it yet at this moment, my new book, Finding Me from Imposter to Icon, is now available on Amazon. And as of this moment, it's sitting at #1 in extreme sport new releases. Absolutely wild. And I just have to say thanks to a few sponsors really quick. First and foremost, Hormesis. They've been with me since day one of this podcast. And if you haven't seen it yet, my new headband is now officially live on the Hormesis' website. They're selling fast. I think there's only a handful of these left. So head over to Hormesis Paintball and grab one while you can. And then, of course, Pro DNA. Those guys have been so amazing to work with. I love their gear bag. I love the backpack that I use. I always have their dry socks packed with me just in case. You never know whenever we're going to see rain. I'm always prepared. So I truly can't recommend Pro DNA enough. And then, of course, last but not least, bfpgear.com. Junior and Gina have been absolutely crushing it over at BFP Gear this year. I feel like every time I open my phone and look at Instagram, there's always some type of new post from BFP Gear where they're like showing off a new product or they're talking about an upcoming sale. Historically, their Black Friday sales have been crazy and the countdown is here. We're finally getting close to Black Friday. So stay tuned to bfpgear.com because I'm sure they're going to be running some crazy deals leading up. All right, back to the episode.
And so, Dan, let's talk about your current story. So World Cup is coming up and you had a book release that had been planned for many months. Talk to me about your book release.
Yeah. Gosh, here we go again, right? It's like the same thing as like repeating itself or repeated itself at this point. I think,
Walk me through the couple days before the book came out.
Yeah. My book was for months. I had a date of 10/10/25. It sounded cool. 10/10, like October 10. It looked cool when you wrote it down. It's on a Friday. So Fridays are a great day to release things. So as we were getting closer to it, like I kept having this feeling of, man, I want to drop this thing sooner. I want to drop it maybe a week before. And I was just getting antsy and anxious and wanted to just get it out there in the world. And I didn't. All around that time, my grandpa was kind of in and out of the hospital and he went back in, I think about a week, maybe a week or two before that. So right at the start of October. I still text him every day, because we text message literally every single day. I think, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 days before, the text messages started to stop. And then I started to get messages on his phone from another family member of like, hey, I'm going to keep you updated. Pop-Pop's having good days. He's having bad days. And so it's like, okay, well, like, what does this mean? And then I got a call, I think it was Tuesday. So this would have been October 7th, if my numbers are right, of, hey, things aren't looking well. And then I was just blunt. And I think because of everything that went down with my mom, I just asked the very blunt question. I was like, give it to me straight. Does that mean like we don't have a lot of time? Like, is he never coming out of the hospital again? And I think the response back I got was, we're going to make him comfortable for as long as we can. And I think I got another message that night that said, hey, things are turning really quick. If you want to call him tomorrow. And so that was on Wednesday, October 8th. And that, man.
It's okay.
I sat in this spot right where I am, and right here on this computer. I had a FaceTime call with him, and obviously not doing well. But we shared a lot of love back and forth, and I got to like talk about the accolades that I was working on, and I got to hear like how proud he was. I got to tell him some nice personal things, and then I think getting off, he was starting to get really tired, and then after saying goodbye, getting off of that FaceTime call was just such a rush of energy or emotion of like, I just something I never felt before, of like, holy cow, this person who means the world to me, like I just literally said goodbye for the last time. And I think, at that point it was, and he acknowledged on the call, he was like, hey, my body's shutting down, it's okay. I think he was at peace with knowing his body was shutting down. I think he was at peace with passing. And then so like it just turned into a waiting game, where like I just every time my phone went off, like I would just check my phone, like, what is it? Is this a call? Is this a message? Is this that message you don't want to see? That was Wednesday. And then Thursday, October 9th, almost to the minute of when I hung up that FaceTime call, I got a message that said he had passed away within the last 5 minutes. And like I think seeing that type of message is just something you can like try to prepare for, but like when you finally see it like come up on your phone, it just like hits you like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
And so like I obviously fell apart, and while we're like sitting and like processing, how we're going to move forward, and like, do I cancel the book launch the next day? I had already had content created for weeks at that point, and I had things like scheduled out to post for that weekend, and like reviews from all over the place. It was, no, we've got to like move forward with this thing. And then almost within 2 or 3 hours, I got a notification from someone in my Discord that like, hey, your book's live.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, it's not. Like, it's not live until midnight tonight.
Yeah.
He was like, no, it's live now, and sent me his screenshot of his order. And so it just kicked into like high gear mode of like, I have to like now focus on this thing's out in the world. Like I have to, shift my gears and like start posting everything everywhere. So it felt like the same thing again of like with my mom, where like I've got this like pinnacle moment of my life where like this super incredible project and book is coming out, and I lost somebody again. So yeah, it was just like a wild weekend that I don't know a lot of people know about that.
And thank you. I know that's really hard to talk about. And thank you so much for opening up, because again, these are the moments where people stop I've stopped. My life has fallen apart and I've stopped for years. And you are just one of the most amazing human beings that embody thank you for sunshine, thank you for rain, thank you for joy, thank you for pain. And you move through it. You don't stop. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people see. I don't think they know what to do with it. And so I'm so grateful for you being incredibly vulnerable and sharing this, because I think this is one of the perfect examples where there's no right way to move forward, right? What do you do? And you have honored both of the people that have meant your world to you. You have honored them in the most beautiful ways that I don't think they would be anything but proud. And that I don't think a lot of people would move in that same way. I think they would stop. I think they would cancel. I think they would shut down. And because you haven't, you have impacted so many people. How many messages have you received from the book launch of people that it's resonated with, of people that it's touched? I mean, you've got screens of it, full of it, right?
Yeah.
And none of that would be possible had you stopped. And so these are the things I really hope people can take away from this, is that it's such an honor to know you, and you have such courage and such strength and such resilience. And when people say, he's just a great guy, like he's such a great dad, he takes these great pictures, you are so much more than that. And it's absolutely incredible, all the things that you're doing. And I don't know if anyone's been able to articulate that, but I'm going to articulate it here. And I hope that other people will echo that and see that about you, that you're a warrior. You're still moving forward with World Cup. You're still moving forward with your life. And that is, in my opinion, the best way that you can honor someone like that. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for moving forward, because I know we've had conversations. I know there's apprehension to write another book, but you just got to keep going.
Well, I certainly appreciate the kind words. It's hard to hear, but I appreciate it.
No, I understand. It's hard to hear, but it's definitely necessary.
Get started. If you've been enjoying these podcast episodes, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It helps out a ton. Thank you so much.
All right. So Dan, you were asking a previous podcast about how COVID impacted you. Take me back to 2020. 2020 obviously was like a pretty turbulent year for both of us, but I want to start out here because when you read the book, you've got this really beautiful vulnerability of teenage years, young adulthood. Then we fast forward to 2022. There is a gap between 2020 and 2022. So I want you take me back to 2020, walk us through from November 2020 to the time that you told me about paintball in Fredericksburg. So it was about 2 years. So walk me through, tell me what was going on at the time, family, relationships, creative outlets, tell your story.
Yeah, I think when Ryan asked that question on his podcast, I think I was just so caught off guard by it, just because like so much turmoil happened in my life, and I was like, man, do I say one of it? Do I say all of it? Like, how do I navigate it? And I was just so like, I think caught off guard with that. So I think that year, and a lot of it's kind of a blur, but that year I went through a divorce, and you went through a divorce, and through that, you and I found each other, and I think we had this plan of like what our life was going to be. We had talked about best case scenarios, worst case scenarios, and then when you do that, I think it's like, oh, okay, like as long as I know kind of the barometer of like where I'll land, like, cool, I'm good. I think what ended up happening was just like the worst of the worst case scenarios. It was like things that we just didn't even plan for.
Yeah.
And I think right around that time, and like I said, again, a lot of it's kind of fuzzy, but right around that time, I'll never forget where I was when I got the phone call. But I remember my mom called me when I was walking around, the apartment outside, and she let me know that like she had cancer and that it had progressed to stage 4. And I didn't know a whole lot about cancer at that point. Like I knew it was really bad. I know that the success rate was not good, especially as you progress in the stages of it. But I just, my mom was always somebody, it's like, oh, nothing's ever going to happen to her. Like she was always the person where when, she got hurt or something, she would just like kind of push through it and, work her way through things. And so she was just always one that I never would have imagined any of that. And so I think it was just that rocked my world on top of going through like all the divorce stuff that happened. And I think I just lost myself. And I think you went through a really probably rockier divorce than what I think we probably would have speculated. Yeah. And I think there were a lot of times that I didn't know if you were going to be around through some really deep depression eras. And so I think it just put me into a spot where I just felt so alone, with a lot of things. And so, yeah, that whole entire, I guess I'll call it a year. I think that was a year, was just an insane blur. And then I think maybe within a year, I had wanted to start a business. And like, I just wanted to feel connected some way. And I talk about it in the book, like how much, Casey Neistat inspired me. I took his class to become like a photographer or a vlogger. And I started a little art business, which was inspired by my grandpa, called Shellda Art. And so like, it's kind of cool that, now fast forward, like the Shellda brand has kind of grown, but it really started from an art business where I was on YouTube creating these paintings and creating, videos from it. And then like that, little business started, selling paints to friends and family. But it just never really like took off like I wanted it to. And so, yeah, it was just like a year of just the lowest of the lows and, trying to like kind of grasp onto anything to like get out of that.
Yeah. And I think, during that time, especially too, Ryan called it out on the podcast, right? In your other podcast, is that COVID was such an isolating time, right? And so just to kind of summarize your year, right? You moved to a brand new city, so no friends, right? Furthest away you've ever been from your family, your support, your rock. You go through a divorce, and then you spend some time with your family, and you have kind of like this really wonderful holiday season, followed by like if you had a worse divorce situation, like the one that I was going through, the person that is supposed to be like your rock at that point, right? And I wasn't. I fell into terrible depression. So you were dealing with that. And then on top of that, not even a full month after you had like a wonderful holiday with your mom, right? Which had been something that you hadn't spent a couple holiday seasons with, like her. Yeah. You get that call about cancer, right? All while I'm still going through this divorce. And you can't really go anywhere because it's COVID. Yeah. So, it's this really isolating time. And that's where I say, like, people hear you've been through hell and back. I don't think anybody can really grasp how many things were hit at you so quickly, and it just didn't stop. Yeah. Right? Like right after that January, the divorce continued. We tried to find a new normal, but all while your mom starts chemo. So it just it just never ended, right? Being on the other side of that, we obviously have like a different view, and you have like a different perspective on it. But you touched on it a bit in the book. It was lonely, right? Walk through like what your mindset was in that time.
Oh man. Yeah, it was so hard because like everywhere in my life that should have been like comfort and safety was not. My family, my mom growing up, I grew up never thinking I was going to leave Connecticut. When I was younger, like I thought I was going to grow up and live there and be around my family for the rest of my life and never really move out of that state, and to move to North Carolina and then to Texas during COVID. It just made me realize like, holy cow, like I am so alone. Like I don't have my family. I potentially can never see them again because of COVID, because we didn't know how much that was going to impact and how long. And then, with everything that you were going through, like another spot where I should be turning, for comfort and safety, like I couldn't, because like you were in a pretty dark spot. And then on top of that, like going to my, my normal 9-to-5 job, I didn't want anyone to know what was going on. So it was, hey, I had a great weekend. And like, I just put the smile on. And so it was just a really hard and lonely time in my life where all of the normal checkbox things that you would go to, I just didn't. I didn't have any of that. And that was at a time in my life where like, when someone mentioned therapy or talking to somebody, I was like, absolutely not. Like that's, for, what weak people do. And so like, I even pushed all of that away. And so, yeah, it was just insanely, it was it was the loneliest time of my life for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it resonates, right? In the book, like it comes across. I wanted to bring this up. I know it's tough to talk about, and I really appreciate it. Like I saw it on the podcast when Ryan talked about COVID. I'm glad we have soundproofing in the house, because I kind of screamed, and then I'm like, oh, we don't talk about 2020. We don't talk about COVID. But I think, since then I've kind of thought about, we do need to talk about it, because what you're describing is so heartbreaking and not uncommon. And I think it's one of the things I want to touch on, because I think that's where you're able to connect so much with people, is because it's this like, when you've gone through something really traumatic and you've gone through like this incredibly ridiculous pain, you can spot it. You can spot it silently, right? I think it's one of the things that like in Paintball, it's where you can spot somebody has these same types of feelings that you've had, and you've tried to relate that to people. And I appreciate that. What you're describing here is so key. So the person in 2020, who we will get to, has grown and progressed. It's the theme of the podcast here. But the person in 2020, you were masked up, man. Like you didn't let anybody in. Even if people tried to be in, you didn't let anyone in. It was this mentality of like, I've got it all together. And meanwhile, there was nothing solid in your life, nothing. You had not one thing that you could count on. And that's not uncommon. It's not uncommon in paintball. It's not uncommon in life, but we don't talk about it because let's describe that, right? Why didn't you talk about it at the time? Why did you mask up? Why didn't you let anybody in?
Gosh, I think that's just what I grew up with. I think that was my childhood. I think being around sports my whole life, I grew up a huge football fan. I played a little bit when I was younger. You just didn't talk about that stuff. Like it was the whole masculine, you shove that shit down. And then, my dad growing up, who I don't talk to now, I'd never seen him cry or share emotions. And he for sure never opened up about anything feeling wise. And so it was just my normal to not do that. And then I think the flip side of that, on everything with my family growing up around them, it was just everything's always great. And if it wasn't great, you find some positivity in it to make it great. And so that just became like, I think my MO during that time period is like, well, hey, this really sucks, but what can I try to find some happiness somewhere? even if there wasn't any. I think it was just like you hear it a lot. It's like the lies we tell ourselves or the story we tell ourselves. I think I was just kind of in that cycle for that year.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. It's the lies we tell ourselves to survive. And that's exactly what you're describing with survival mode.
Yeah.
But you were silently in survival mode, even though you had a lot of people like trying to get into your world. I remember like that was a constant disagreement we had as I was trying to be there. And there was such a distance, I think, because there was just so much pain. And that makes complete sense. So talk to me about that aspect, because again, I don't think that's like, it's not uncommon for a lot of people to do that. When your whole world's falling apart, you just kind of try to control something, even if that's like pushing good people away.
I don't think I understand your question.
Talk to me about, okay, I'm going to switch that one. Okay. So obviously, again, not an uncommon place for a lot of people to be. And it's heartbreaking because you're doing this silently. You're suffering silently, right? This survival mode. We're at 2020, right? Past the first year, I would say, of COVID. You had started some creative ventures. You had kind of done that, it sounds like, because you were trying to have a form of escapism, something to put joy in, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yep. So tell me about when you look at those experiences and you were going through it, because you hear about this in the book, but I want your perspective. Did it feel, think about in the time, did that feel right? Like it was the right choice? Or was there always something within you that was like, yeah, this isn't it?
So I think where you're going is like with like starting Shellda Art and like that whole venture, mm-hmm. right? Yeah.
And the Casey Neistat. Yeah.
Oh man. I think a lot of that was because my life was in such turmoil at that time. I think where everything started with Casey is it was just an escape for me of what I see online was this person that I looked up to as a creator. And it's just, I felt so good watching his content that like, it just became an escape. Like I would just binge like for hours. So just binge his videos, just to escape from everything and then not think about anything. And so I think that kind of spiraled into like, well, I can do that. Like, let me get a camera, let me become a YouTuber, let me start like a little business. And if I do that, I'll still have that same escapism where like, I won't have to worry about, everything going on in my life. But it just, like it feels gross. It just never felt, fake is such a powerful word, but like, I kind of felt fake in a way, or forced maybe. Probably forced, mm-hmm. I would say.
Yeah, I can understand that. And the reason I ask that is because a lot of times, like, we try ventures as a form of escapism, right?
Sure.
And you wrote in the book, you wrote about how paintball just felt right, but you were also pushing yourself, right? And so my kind of the thing I'm trying to get at here is, what was the difference? Obviously looking back at it now, it was really clear, but what was the difference in when you were doing the Casey Neistat videos, the Shellda Art, the vlogs? Like, it was really, your vlogs were, incredible. And this is something people don't know about you, is like your cinematography was like mind blowing. It was time consuming. And I think that's part of the reason it's tough. But it was gorgeous. Like, you had such a photographer's eye, even when doing the vlog. So it seemed like at the time it felt right, but now you look back and you say it's kind of fake. Was there ever a part of that while you were doing it that was like, yeah, no, this isn't it, that's different with paintball?
Yeah, I think I wanted it. I just wanted to be seen so bad that like I was just justifying how can I use this method to like try to be seen and like try to be famous and try to blow up on YouTube. And so I think you hear it from a lot of kids, right? That like want to be a YouTuber, and like when you ask them why, they're like, "Why I want to be famous? Like I want to have 1 million subs and I want the play button." And I think for me, those were my motivating factors, is because I was so lonely that I wanted to not be lonely and I wanted people to see me. And so I think it just felt totally different from paintball, because for paintball, my relationship with paintball when I was a kid, it was another form of escapism. I had played sports all growing up. Not baseball. I played baseball for like a year, then stopped. But I played basketball and football. But I was never like a superstar. I was never the person. I was always middle to bottom tier. I always got like the most improved award kind of person.
Yeah.
And paintball was like it was the first thing that I ever did that when I stepped on the field, whether I was 12 or 13 years old and the guy next to me was 20 or 30, and if I was fast and he was slow, whatever we were holding in our hands, we had the same competitive advantage. And I think I really latched on to that. And right around that time, the guys from Dynasty were pretty close in my age. I didn't know their exact age, but they all looked really young. And I just like latched on to like, wow, like I love this sport. They're doing it at this level. And I just wanted to like be like them. And so I took in as much of their content that I could back then. And that was before YouTube or social media. So it was all online. It was all VHSs and magazines. And I just remember being so obsessed with paintball that like I thought about it all day, every day at school. I thought about it. I used to draw on my binders, like just to not think about school, just to think about paintball. My senior year, like I used to skip school all the time when this video game came out around paintball just to play it. And like I got so obsessed with it that they had a ranking system and I was in the top 10 at some point. And so, yeah, it just became something that like I just thought about 24/7, and every time I thought about it, like it just made me so happy. So really, I think a really long-winded answer to your question, I think.
No, you're good. So yeah, obviously paintball's been important to you. I mean, for all of your life, right? It sounds like. When did paintball stop and why? And then what my follow-up question is going to be to that. But let's start with that one.
So it stopped. So I played 2 national events when I was in high school, NPPL Tampa and NPPL Denver, the 7-man series. And the teams that I were on weren't the greatest, just a bunch of local kids. And then after that, no one really wanted to continue playing. Like, I don't know if it was just the finances or the drive, or maybe it was going away every weekend, because my field, Matt's Outback in Connecticut, was an hour drive for us. So like having to do that every weekend, I think a lot of people lost the drive for that, literally. And so I like bounced around to a few local teams. But then it just wasn't really popular in that area at that time. And so for me to get out to these fields, it just became really hard. And then when I graduated, or when I went to college, there were just, I was a college kid, with a college kid budget. And so I didn't have the money or means to play. And so I stopped playing for years at that point. I still remained a fan. Like I was still on PB Nation every week, sometimes daily, getting updates, talking to people in the paintball world and the community. And still just being much as a fan as I could.
Yeah.
And then I think there may have been like a spurt like right after college where like I got all the gear again. And then knowing that I had to like drive an hour plus to the field was like, oh man, I don't know anybody. I'm going to show up as this like new person. And I didn't do it. I did it once. And I think I just got in my head of like, there's no way I'm doing this. There's no way I can maintain this.
Yeah.
And so I just went back to being a fan for the longest time.
So you were a fan from that time till the time you picked up the camera to go on the field. Is that right?
Yeah, I think the one or two caveats there. Right before I picked up the camera, I got all the gear again when I moved here in Austin. And I went to Outlaw Paintball, and I played for a few weekends, but I think I was just so out of shape that my body wasn't taking, the abuse of the diving and all that stuff. And so I stopped playing after a handful of weekends, and I was like, oh, I'll pick up a clipboard because I have all these years of experience watching paintball. And so I tried my hand at coaching the then lower line of Austin Notorious's like 3-man, I think, at Paintball Fit for maybe it was a Bunker Fest or something. And that just did not go well at all. I had my iPad. I was like drawing up plays on it, and like one of the other players on a higher team came over and like took the tablet out of my hand. I was like, no, this is wrong, and like cross everything out. And I was like, well, shit, I guess coaching is not my thing. And then the camera was quickly after that.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to try to figure out is, we're going to go back in time again here. We time traveled. But you had the really rough year, right? 2020, 2021. For the next year, right? You're still trying to find a new normal. Your mom's cancer treatment had started, and you were getting a lot of mixed messaging, right? About that. Trying to go up there, visit as much as possible while still trying to maintain a life here. Your life was kind of chaos still. And that kind of continued, right? For, I don't know, a couple more years. So tell me about that time, because this is right around the time you started Casey, you started to do these videos. Why did you stop the videos and Shellda Art?
I think if I'm honest with myself, I put so much time and effort into those, and to only get like a handful of views at best, I think was probably one of the driving factors. Like that's where some of the imposter syndrome came in of like, man, why am I even doing this if no one's watching it? But then, like I would make some travel vlogs of going back and forth and like surprising or like, having my mom in it and whatnot and some of my family members. And I remember like just holding the camera or like taking different angles or shots, and I could just see everyone felt so uncomfortable. I think I understood like, hey, I'm, these weird camera movements. It's to tell a story. It's going to be a cool shot. I'll put some music behind it. It'll look cinematic. But I just remember like the pure judgment that I was getting of, well, this is really weird. Like, I don't know if I want a camera in my face. And I think a lot of that kind of just made me like clam up, and all of that combined together was probably a big reason why I stopped. And I think, doing the art business with it, like creating paintings, through YouTube, it was like a niche of a niche of a niche. And once the surface level of like my family and like my mom's friends stopped, once those customers were checked off, it's like you sit back and like, okay, where's everyone else? Like, where's the rest of these customers? No one was like reaching out or buying anything. And that was how I kind of created those videos, is like an order would come in. I would create the video based off of like what the inspiration was. And like, I would document the colors that I used and like put music behind it and talk about the whole entire inspiration. And so because customers weren't coming in, I didn't have ways to make those videos. And so like there was a few reasons why I kind of stopped.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I think one of the things that you're describing is the passion wasn't there, right? You were in it for the wrong reason. There was passion, of course, but again, kind of in it for the wrong reason. And I think it kind of reflected, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, like all the, the camera gear that I bought was like, oh, I'll make this money back. Like, I'll sell the ton of paintings. I'll, monetize on YouTube at some point, and like, I'll make all this money back. And so it was just a justification loop I kept putting myself into to do that.
I think, and we'll touch on this a little bit later, but I think that was probably part of the beginning of where, like, I've said this so many times, dude, you are the most powerful manifestor I've ever met. And I think that was probably just like a little bit of a lesson of, this isn't meant to be, like, this isn't your thing. But again, like, we'll come back to that. So I want to fast forward a little bit, and I want to talk about your first book, this outside the paintball community, right? So Shellda Art had kind of subsided at that point. The vlogs, I don't think you were making many vlogs at that point at all. You don't sit still like me, which is amazing. So talk to me about how the idea came about for your first book.
Yeah, so the Lost Orb, which is it's a book. So I guess to paint the full picture of it, when my mom was going through with her cancer treatment, there's an island, a really small island off of Connecticut, or Rhode Island, kind of that border, called Block Island, that ended up just being like an escape for her. I think it was like she was able to kind of go there, like listen to the water and, process whatever she was processing, emotionally. I think the water and the beach for her was always like that kind of place. Mm-hmm. And so being across the country, I had known she was going to Block Island multiple times a year with, family and some friends. And I never got to experience that with her. And I think that year we did a summer vacation up there where I got to experience that for the first time. And on that island, they have, I actually have it right here, which is crazy because I normally don't have it here.
It's meant to be.
Like we're in the process of moving our desks at work. And like, this is normally what I have on my desk at work. And so I brought it home so it didn't get damaged. They have, there's an artist that on that island, he creates these glass orbs every year, and he like hides them around. I don't know if that'll focus. He hides them around the island, and so I don't know. There's maybe 100 of these every year that he creates, and literally hides them everywhere. And it turned into like a cult following, where like people that would go to this island would find out that there's these orbs that you could like just go hunt for, and it turned into like this kind of family thing where like whenever families would go, it kind of turned into like an activity that brought people together. Mm-hmm. And there's like a whole community. There's a Facebook group behind the orbs and whatnot. And so going into that, like I knew that was really special to my mom and, family and some of her friends at the time, because some of them have found them before. I don't think my mom had ever found one. So I just knew how special these orbs were.
Yeah.
And as we're driving around the island, you hear a lot from musicians where when they say like, oh, the song came to me in the middle of the night, like all the lyrics were there. And I woke up and wrote down, I was like, that's bullshit. That never happens.
Except
that weekend, like we were driving around the island and it just like, it came out of nowhere. I'm like, holy shit, like I could do a book with this. Like I could, document this journey of like this little girl that's going around the island trying to find these orbs, and the whole journey taking her to like different places, or different points on the island where she's looking. And then the payoff at the end, spoiler alert, is that she finds an orb, but I could also tie in my mom as one of the characters. Mm-hmm. And so I went back to the place that we were staying. I had my laptop, luckily, because I think I was still doing some type of like video work at the time. And I just hammered out the story, and I think I wrote majority of it in like, I don't know, an hour and a half.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was just a really, as I'm doing it, I'm like, wow, this is such a really special place for my mom. I can now create a story that I can almost like give back to her to make this place even more special for her.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that was your question. And I think that's...
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, no, it is. and that's amazing. And the reason I want you to talk about this book is obviously it's something, it has a lot of meaning. It's such a good memory for your mom. I know it meant so much to her. And I think the thing that a lot of people don't see, and you're so humble. I've been waiting to get you on a podcast so I could try to push you so you're not as humble, is that it's not super common for someone to drive around, sit down, and the amount of things you did with this book is you developed the characters, you developed the story, you literally like obviously you hired an illustrator, but you knew exactly what you wanted from it. And how you meticulous you are and like how you think things through it's such a cool process to see. I remember the first time you described this book, I was like, okay, this is a cool thing for your mom. And then when you start for kids all over the place,
Can you go back like 10 seconds?
finding orbs.
There we go. We lost you for a second. I heard you were like, you said, which is okay. It happens sometimes. You said, no, it's okay. It's part of it.
This is going terribly.
No, you're crushing it as a host.
I am not. It's fine.
I
Okay.
feel like I'm just long-winded. No,
that's good.
I had heard you were talking about like the character development and like it's not normal for someone to do that, and I think that's where it kind of got fuzzy. So if you want to pick it back up from there.
Okay. So one of the things about you, Dan, that I've wanted to get you on a podcast for so long is because you are ridiculously humble, almost to a fault. And we could dissect that in an entire podcast another day. But, you know, one of the things that you're really humble about is you just kind of incredible. You not only like had this character development for your mom, amazing and so thoughtful, but in an afternoon you knew the places that you could tell the illustrator and the amount of detail, like angle you would want to see it. You had pictures, like you took those pictures so you could know exactly what you wanted in this book, and you had this storytelling that was so beautiful. And the way that you put these small details in, it blows my mind. And it's the coolest thing to see. And one of my favorite memories with the book is you put orbs. So sorry about all the spoilers, but you had put orbs in this book. And when you read it to Bella, she was so excited. It was like you had combined Where's Waldo with like a child's story. And it was cool for parents. Like you encompassed so many things into this book. It was a memoir, right? It was honoring someone. It was a treasure hunt. It was Where's Waldo. You did this in a couple years. And one of the things I find so amazing about you is you didn't leave it there. You found an illustrator and you jumped through a lot of hoops. You know what? I'm not going to tell that story. Dan, how did that book come to be?
Yeah, I think, I don't know where it came from. I don't know if it's just like watching so much content. But like when I had the idea, I knew exactly like what I wanted to look like and the flow of it. And I think the hard part was just getting it from my brain on paper fast enough. And I think from the illustrator perspective, I had done so much research on like self-publishing, and there's services out there that you can use and pay for at a fairly cheap cost, but a lot of those images just look exactly the same. Like you can tell that it looks AI generated before we had AI years ago. And I didn't want them. Like I wanted, my vision was like, I would see this book on a bookshelf in a bookstore, like at Barnes and Noble. And I'd be like, oh, that's for sure something like a one of a kind, not something that looks like every other character, from this service that you could pay for online. And so I did a ton of research on different illustrators, and I finally landed on Rachel, the one that I used, just because I loved her work. It was unique from what I saw, and it kind of filled that kid kind of vibe that I was looking for. And then, I told her my vision, and she did a great job of kind of bringing the story to life honestly, without ever seeing it. And so I kind of knew where like she started to ask me questions of like, well, what does this look like? What about this? And I knew, okay, I need to now provide her more detail and provide her not just one image of how I'm explaining it, but maybe like different angles of a certain location or image, so she can kind of paint that picture when she was creating the images on the page.
That's amazing. And the storytelling you have and the creativity you have, again, like it's just not a common thing. And I think that's where I listen to you when you're talking to other people about the work you do on a paintball field, and I just don't think it gets enough credit because you are a master storyteller. You can see a story playing out and capture it. And I think that's what makes some of your work so unique. And it's something that like I want to call out. You've been doing for a while. We've had these other ventures. And so I want to tie it back to this, right? Tying it back to this timeline. So you published the book. The book took a bit of time, right? Like it took did it take almost a year, or I'm losing time?
Yeah, I think it was close to a year. I think you're right.
Yeah. And so at that point you have the book, right? Talk me through how life had changed between all of the chaos, the first couple of years past 2020, everything fell apart, and how your world had changed. You obviously tried some creative ventures, made a couple shifts within them, and things are a roller coaster kind of with your mom. So talk to me about, we talked about how you were feeling in the beginning of this, like really lonely. What were you feeling while writing this book and going through the vlog experience and kind of shifting away from that?
I think, and again, a lot of it's a blur, but I think around that time, like the cancer, like you could tell it was starting to get bad because I think she was starting to lose hair. And I think there are times where we would go up there and she would just sleep a lot. Like she just wasn't herself.
Yeah.
So I think in the back of my mind, I knew like, okay, even though she's telling me she's okay, and even though she's telling me that like, hey, everything's going okay, I just think I knew that it wasn't subconsciously. And so I think it then became like, okay, how can I pay tribute to her through this story? Like, how can I use this platform to honor her? And then also, if it happens to where, she passes soon, I want to be able to have her experience this and have her get this high of like, this book is dedicated to her, this special place. And so that literally became my driving force of doing it, which I think that helped me through a lot of those challenging times where like when she wasn't doing well. I think I used that as a lot of motivation.
That's amazing. And describe the experience when she was at Block Island and saw your book in the bookstore.
Yeah, like that was such a surreal moment because I think that's the payoff, right? Is like whenever you create something, that the payoff is always when you release it to the public or when the first customer sees it or you hear the story of how whatever widget or whatever it is changes or impacts their life. Like that was my payoff, was going to the bookstore, knowing that the book was going to be on the shelves there. And then having her walk in and see it, it was just such a special moment because like it was cool for me. It was validation for me that like the work that I created was actually one in a store. But then like there was a moment, there's just moments that you can't script. And like, that was one of them because there was another customer in the store and my mom went and grabbed the book and I think she turned around and was checking out and she's like, oh yeah, like my son wrote this, he's right here. And another customer either was holding it or was like, oh my God, I'm coming to the store for this same exact book.
Yeah.
And so like it turned into like a mini like autograph session and like a moment where like my mom was just like over the moon of like, it was just such a wild experience where we're going into the store for one thing and it turned into this other whole entire experience that I just couldn't script.
Yeah.
And that's just something that I'm forever grateful for. And like we have pictures of it. Like at some point, somebody took out a camera and took pictures of all of us and whatnot. And so there's just a really, really special moment.
That's amazing. And I think like your journey, it's been just this combination of so many highs and lows, right? And so that was obviously such a great high. It was really cool to experience that. And then I think, after that, summers have always been a little bit challenging. But you started paintball not too long after that, right?
Yeah, I think
getting lost in time.
Yeah, I think it was like maybe a month or two after that trip is when I
Mhm.
started paintball. Like when I got all the gear again, like I mentioned earlier, and played for a little bit. And that was right around like when Notorious got their pro spot, and I knew Outlaw was their home field. So yeah, I was really close to that.
So walk me through, and we'll probably have to like edit some of this together because it's all over the place, but walk me through, you have this book, right? And you have this really high moment with your mom. What brought you back to paintball?
Uh, I mean, honestly, like I attribute a lot of it to being a fan of the sport and seeing that Austin Notorious won a pro spot. And I just created such a curiosity for me of like, wait, there's this team in a city that I just moved to that I would dream of having a professional paintball team. And that was my dream growing up. Like, majority of the pro teams were on the West Coast. And so that wasn't even a possibility for me. And so I think to know that there was a professional paintball team in my backyard, I just had to figure it out. And like, I had to go and like understand that. And when I figured out that they were playing out of Outlaw Paintball, which then I understood was about a 10-minute drive from where we live, I was like, holy smokes, like I need to go chase this. Like the worlds are aligning way too much for me to not just go explore and try to get involved somehow. And I think, I went through what I typically would go through when I want to get involved with something, like how can I get to the top the fastest without doing all the hard work? And so it was like, is it social media? Is it helping out running the team? Is it maybe I'll step into like a management role, whatever that looked like? It was just any way to get involved so I could say I was a part of a professional paintball team, which is something that I always like had dreamed of. And that's kind of where it started. And then, talking with their owner and a lot of pushback of back and forth. At their time, their social media wasn't the greatest. And I had an eye for it, I think. And so like I really pushed him to give me the Austin Notorious account, which he did. And I ran that for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months. That's where we're obviously starting to get to the photography journey. But so I think honestly, it was seeing Austin Notorious hit the pro spot is probably what like really wanted me to get back into it.
That's cool. So, it's interesting. And I don't know if you ever like make these connections, but the things that you describe, right? They have the trend that you described in the book, right? Something was fueling because of like ego, right? And something was fueling because of purpose. And what's so fascinating is look at the stuff that didn't work out, right? Casey Neistat, the vlogs didn't work out. Art didn't work out because it was this thought process of I'm going to be at the top as quickly as possible. Look at the book for mom, right? Completely different scenario. And look at how beautifully that turned out. And I say this because when I hear you talk about how you got on the pro field, there is such a different story to that. And again, it's that humility that comes out. But this is the story I want to tell, which is how you are the most incredible manifester. So you and I have to have a dialogue of how your photography went down. So let's talk through that together. So where's Fredericksburg, right? Fredericksburg, Texas? What is wine country?
Mm-hmm.
Is it Fredericksburg? Yeah. Okay. So we're up there. You've been playing paintball, and walk through that conversation that you had with me.
Yeah, I think, one, that was like the first time I had ever talked to a partner about paintball.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you had known about it a little bit because like I was playing it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, I think that was the first time I ever opened up to anybody other than my mom with saying like, hey, this sport like means so much to me. And so like, that was just such an insanely hard conversation for me to have. And I think that conversation there was so much justification in there of, hey, I've got this opportunity, like, we could travel, I'm going to be on this like pro team, on this staff for the pro team. And in order to do so, like, I think there's an opportunity for me to like get a camera and take pictures. That way I can like, have my own content. And so I just think I just justified so much of what I wanted. without like ever really talking about like the passion behind it or like why it was important to me. I think I was like putting on such a facade to try to sell something to you versus like actually opening up and being vulnerable and be like, hey, this is why this sport is so important to me.
I'm so glad we're having this conversation. I don't think we've had this conversation this in depth before, so I'm glad we're doing it live on camera right now. So what's fascinating is anytime that you had gone into like a new venture, it was the same conversation. Here are the opportunities. Here's the promised result out of it. And I think I had reached a point where I was like, okay, here we go again. But what's fascinating about this story is, I'm going to get like super personal here. We were in the hot tub. Like it was a beautiful night. Stars are out. And you're like talking about how much paintball has meant to you. Like that was your sales pitch, man. It wasn't following around Austin Notorious. Like I didn't sign up for that.
Not my greatest moment, that's for sure.
Actually it was one of like at least a top 10 moment with you where you were so raw and honest about how much something had meant to you. And it wasn't because of anybody else. Like, I think that's what made such a difference. It was like, not because somebody got famous. It was not for anybody else, but it was something that was like you. And I felt like after all these years of you were masked up, I felt like this was the first time I actually got to see you. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. And I think because that's the first time I've ever experienced that, like it just felt like it was fake. Like I felt like you were just saying that just to like either stroke my ego, or you were saying that because like you felt like you had to because you were my partner. I just remember being like, wait a minute, something's off here. Like the protector in me is like, something's off here. Something's not going to go well with this, and it's going to come back to me at some point.
Which I think is completely normal based off of like the past however many years you had just had, where like everything just kept getting uprooted for you.
Yeah.
So I appreciate like you were vulnerable with that. And the thing, when I say you're the best manifestor in the world, I want you to, I don't know if you've shared this in depth, but like one of the things that like gives me goosebumps about that whole experience is describe to me what you kept envisioning about getting on the pro field.
Well, I mean, I think the deep down part of it is, you know, Dynasty has always just meant so much to me since I was a kid. And I think I kept thinking back to being, a fan at that young age and thinking, wow, there's an opportunity for me that I can go capture moments of my childhood heroes and be on literally the same playing field as them, which is insane to say. You know, like not a lot of people can be on the same playing surface as their heroes. And so I really think that was a driving factor of it. And I think I used a lot of the, like some of the notorious stuff to like kind of mask a lot of that. I don't think I've ever actually shared that. But yeah, that was a really big part of, so like, to answer your question, to come back to it, I think I just visioned a lot of like what it would look like and what it would feel like to stand on that field and like watch, the team, watch Dynasty come out to like hear the DYNASDY chant, and just try to like literally feel that. And that drove a lot of that motivation to go after it.
Yeah, that's spot on. Like that's one of my favorite parts of that story that you tell, is because when you talk about manifestation, I know you've done this with other people on the podcast, so now I'm going to talk about it with you. When you talk about manifestation, it's different, right? Like, and you can see that in your journey. You can see you tried to manifest with the art, selling, you were trying to do all the right things, checking all the boxes. But at the end of the day, what you were trying to kind of like bring to life was, I want to be seen, I want to be successful. Yeah. And like, you kind of knew that wasn't it, and it didn't work, right? When you were trying to create the book for Mom, obviously you wanted her to see that. Like that was a part of like a legacy piece for her, right? And that came to fruition. And so when we get to paintball, the reason it's so important, and I'm pushing you to talk about this, is because when you talk about how you got to Florida, I have a totally different view on it, man. You describe it as a loophole, and you're giving yourself absolutely no credit. You know, it's okay, I called Tom, there was a loophole. Let's talk about, and if I have to, I'll talk about it. But the other side of that experience was you read terms and conditions like I do. Like you're looking at it from a lawyer perspective. Like you and I, like we've been through enough divorce and like legal terminology. We're pretty adept in, being able to speak that. And you're like pacing the living room, going through like, well, it doesn't say this. And like you're building out how you're going to like, in your head, take Tom Cole to court. You're not, you can cut that out, but that's the passion you had with this. And like, as soon as that door closed, you were on the phone with Charles. You were relentless. And so when you say like, yeah, I had a loophole, I called Tom, Dan, we were up like 5 to 6 hours working on this thing every single day straight around your day job. And in the moments where you were like, hey, I don't think this is going to work, the thing I don't think you know is you conveyed such a passion behind it that I was the irrational one of like, what the hell, get in the car, we're going to Florida. Like, I don't care, and that all came from this drive of you had envisioned yourself on that pro field. And I don't like, do you see that about you?
I mean, you say it and it's, yes, I see it, but I think part of me still is like, yeah, but like, well, yeah, but, and that's why I think I always default to, and looking back at it, I can see like how crazy obsessed I got with it. And I think that's kind of a natural thing for me, is like when I want something, like I just get so obsessed about it. But I think this was one of the first times where I wanted something and I didn't want to be like, I didn't want it for fame. I didn't want it for, money or whatever it was. I just wanted whatever. I wanted to be a photographer. I wanted to be on that pro field. I wanted to create these moments. So I for sure see it.
I'm glad, because I think one of the things I find so fascinating about you, and I could see it in the book, right, is this idea from the title, Finding Me, right? Imposter to icon. When you talk about imposter, you talk about imposter syndrome quite a bit, but it almost seems like you've got this relationship, and I call it out again because it's like, I think a lot of people feel this, but they don't have words to it. When you look at imposter is what? I'm trying to be something else. I'm trying to do something else. I'm trying to not be me. I'm trying to be anything else. I'm trying to impersonate something, right? Imposter syndrome, and I did actually Google this earlier. I did look this up. Imposter syndrome is actually when you've done the work, but you still like an imposter. You feel like you don't deserve it. Mm-hmm. So they're two very different state of minds, but it sounds like there's still that conflict between going back and forth between an imposter and imposter syndrome. And when you look at your journey, I can clearly see like, here were the imposter moments, but here's the imposter syndrome. Do you see any of those differences where some of the creative ventures were imposter and now it's imposter syndrome?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everything with the, like all the creative outlets, like, trying to be a vlogger, trying to, have a YouTube channel and like have an art business. It was totally, I think that was probably the imposter part of it, of like, yes, I was doing it, but I still felt fake because I was still trying to be something else, or it was some external factor. And then I think everything with paintball, with photography, like that's where the imposter syndrome kicked in, because even though I was in it and doing it and enjoying it, it's still didn't feel real because I was still comparing myself to everybody around me. So yes, I do see the difference.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
It took a while. It took a while to get there, though. That's for sure.
Do you still feel like there's moments within photography, within everything you're doing in paintball, that you feel like an imposter instead of imposter syndrome?
Sometimes I think so. Like there's certain shots, like morning shots or like nighttime shots. If I'm on the field and like there's a late set and like the sun's really like it's really dark, I struggle so much in those moments. And like other photographers, they're just getting like crazy good shots there. I'm like, man, maybe I shouldn't be here. Like maybe this isn't my thing, or they're doing like, what am I missing? So I think I still have that a little bit.
Do you think, well, actually, let me rephrase that. How do you ever get out of that state? Like what needs to happen for you to kind of be able to say to yourself, no, I'm here. I'm good.
So the first two things that come to mind are, and this could be right or wrong, but I think how my brain processes it is like, I need to go obsess about that and learn about it so I can go get that shot that I'm looking for. That way, in that moment again, I don't feel that way. So that's where my brain went first. And I think it also went to a place of the typical, like, well, you don't have to compare yourself to other people. Like, stop comparing yourself. And so I think that's probably how I would answer that. And I think knowing myself, it's probably the first part of it is like, I would probably go try to figure out how to do it and obsess about it and learn about it so I can then go create that. And I think I've done that to some extent for like sunrise shots. I'm still not where I want to be, but like to see the progression over the past few years versus like this year, like I actually feel better about a lot of those shots that I'm getting in the morning versus like the start of it. I was just like, I'm going to point my camera in this direction and hopefully it comes out. So it's definitely come a long way.
Well, and I think that's the overarching theme here, right? Is it's growth. It's been growth. And I think what you're describing is actually, I understand like it kind of fuels that imposter, but I actually think what you're describing is a growth mindset. And it sounds like you've been able to kind of harness that into recognizing areas of opportunity and being able to go after them and kind of grow a little bit stronger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that where you're at? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to take a look then. You have manifested, right? Being on the pro field. The next, and I know like we're going to run out of time here and we can edit this, right? But like the next year of your life, right, is a roller coaster of highs and lows and highs and lows. This is, again, another part when we talk about like you've been through hell and back. Talk me through that first year of paintball, everything that happened personally, doing the book with Dynasty. Like, this is the part where be vulnerable, talk about like, what did you feel? What were you going through? How are you holding it together?
Yeah, I think that, the whole thing with the book, I think there were multiple reasons why I did it. I think one, I kept hearing people talk about, we've got to grow the sport. Like we've got to do, get the sport to a certain spot. And I just remember seeing so many kids at whatever event it was. And I think maybe it was like a bunker fest or something. And they were just like sitting in some little chair that their family had brought them, and they had headphones on and they were watching whatever they were on their tablet. And I just thought, wow, they're going to sit here for 2 or 3 days, bored out of their mind, just doing that, when that's potentially could be the future of our sport. And so that's where it's like, maybe I could do a children's book with this. And then I think it was similar to where the first book happened, where it was just like a flood of like all these ideas started to come in of like, well, I'm going to be on the field with Dynasty. So like, that's always been a dream to like do anything with them, to have my name attached anywhere remotely with Dynasty. Maybe there's a way where I could work with them. Like maybe I could write a book and one of their players is a character in it. And so I think I went home and like scripted out, kind of a loose idea of what the story was. And I think I talked about it in the book with like, where I had Ryan Greenspan's email at some point, and I just emailed him. I'm like, hey, I've got this crazy idea. Like, I'm a new photographer. I don't even think he knew who I was at that point yet. And I want to do a children's book. Here's what it is. He had actually, he had purchased a bunch of my mom's books the year before and did a giveaway on the Spick and Span show as part of their like holiday charity raffle. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And I was just like, holy shit, there's no way this guy just said yes to writing this book. And like, it was just instant panic and sweat of like, wow, now I kind of have to do this. And then it turned into just like, well, like that's where like I just went into overdrive of like, cool, like let's figure out what I want it all to look like. And then it went into, well, how am I going to launch this thing? And if I'm going to launch it, I want to launch it, at like this epic moment. And it was like, I have to do this at World Cup. It was going to be my first ever World Cup that year. And so I was like, what better way to launch this book at World Cup, my first ever World Cup? Like, it would just be a dream come true if everything worked out well logistically, and like the timelines worked out, and it ended up being to where like we got super close on the timeline where we were waiting back and forth on illustrations from Rachel, and there were a few points where I had to like really push her, like, hey, we have a cutoff date to like get copies of it in and whatnot, so I could proof it, so Ryan could proof it. And it became a year of like, just, I kept thinking about like World Cup, of what it would look like, what it would feel like, standing inside of Dynasty's tent with my book, signing autographs, having players behind me, and just being immersed in that Dynasty culture. It just became like a driving factor of that whole entire year. And honestly, when I got to the field, when we got to World Cup and like we set up, the table inside Dynasty's tent with my books and whatnot, it was such a surreal moment of looking around of like, this is what I imagined. Like, this is seeing the book on the counter. I think they even had a bunch of my pictures that I took that year. They printed out, and like they were selling prints, I think, that year of my work.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the first times in my life where like I truly had a dream or a vision, manifestation, whatever you want to call it, and it came to life. It's a long
No, it's a beautiful point of manifestation. There's one other element that I want people to know about you that I don't think people know about you. You had this lyric 2 years ago. I thought it was going to be a tattoo at some point. It might still be. Thank you for sunshine.
Thank you for rain.
Thank you for rain.
Thank you for joy. Thank you for pain. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it was that year that that happened, right? And here's the part I don't think a lot of people know in depth was we started the summer. We were planning Disney with your mom. She wasn't able to make it with us. That didn't end up happening. The plans changed. She'd come to World Cup. We'd get her to Disney, right? And all of that time we had kept getting the messaging of we've got more time. We've got a year, right? We've got multiple years. She's going to make it to 80. And then walk us through September up to World Cup of that year.
Yeah, I mean, that was like, it was a kind of another like blur moment. Because I think my mom was starting to do well. Like, she was on the mend, for what she told us, at least from afar. And then I think the cancer spread. I think it spread to her brain. And I think they decided to do brain surgery, or well, whatever you consider the surgery is, to like remove, whatever cancer they could from it. And so she had decided to do that because it was supposed to have a good prognosis, or whatever the word is. And I just remember thinking, how is this possible? Like, you have stage 4 cancer. It's now spreading to your brain. And yet you're telling me that, like, hey, it's going to be okay. Like, I'm going to have the surgery and it's going to be better and recover from it. And it's like, it just didn't make sense. But it's my mom and she's telling me all that. And so, like, I didn't want to like call her out on it, or like call her out on a bluff.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm feeling all of that, she's telling me that, and then you're telling me something completely different. You're like, hey, I don't think this is right. Like, something's off here. And so it really put me in the middle of like, who do I believe? And it kind of put me back in that, like, that lonely spot from COVID of like, my mom saying one thing, you're saying one thing, you're both supposed to be my support system. And like, nah, I felt like I didn't have a support system in that moment. And, she went through the surgery, was successful, but I think it took so much out of her body that, like, it was just such a fast decline after that, that, and I think I might be blurring the months at this point from September and in October. But it ended up being to a spot where, like, she just wasn't responding to my text messages anymore. Like, FaceTime calls weren't being answered, calls weren't being responded to. And, her doctors were like, oh, it's, she's, we don't know. We think she's got a few years left. And it's like, okay, well, like, we think she's got a few years left. And I think this was at some point in early October, maybe. And then, like, within a week, it shifted to, hey, we don't know how much time she has left. Like, you may want to start thinking about coming up here. And then it turned into, hey, we're going to send her home and we're just going to make her comfortable, but she probably has a few months. And so, like, every single time it just kept being like, well, wait a minute, like, my book is coming out. My first World Cup is coming out. I've got this epic year that's kind of coming to a crescendo, right? My Shellda brand took off. I had merchandise going that year. Yeah. Obviously, everything with Dynasty. I was now working with them at events where, like, they were using my photos for their social media posts. And, like, just this perfect moment was coming. And then I got the phone call, which, I talk about in chapter 7 of, if you want to say goodbye, like, you kind of gotta come up here now. And the next morning, gosh, I didn't expect to cry in this. The next morning, we flew up there, and I think we had another day before she passed, and then it was, we have to fly back to Austin to go to X Factor because Dynasty was going to be there, and I had already shipped, like, whatever it was, 100 copies of the book to the field, so all of us could sign it together because they were going to take it back because they were doing a release as well. All to then fly to World Cup to then fly back for a funeral. And so, like, it was just a month of just insanity that I don't think a lot of people knew about at the time.
You're right. And I think that's where your resilience, I don't think anyone understands your resilience, because I know the timeline's blurry and I understand that. To kind of fill you in, it was flew up, your mom passed away, you got COVID. We flew back to Austin. Thankfully you were not contagious at that point. I feel like I should put that disclaimer in here. X Factor, flew back, funeral, and then flew to World Cup. And so this all happened within 2 weeks. And the resilience you have, it blows my mind, and the strength that you have, because you went to World Cup and you were somehow able to honor your mom and live out that manifestation, even though it looked entirely different, because you had envisioned her being there. You had envisioned even just reading it to her. I mean, that vision had changed so many times. And you do a beautiful job in the book, and thank you for opening up here. But I don't think that's something people know about you. It's just the amount of strength and the amount of perseverance. And when I say you're an icon in this sport, those are the moments that nobody knows about. And it's crazy to me because you're at World Cup and your life has been turned completely upside down in 2 weeks. Like, you had no other lead time to this. And everybody's having a blast. and you're like crushed on the inside, haven't even had a second to process anything. And this little kid walks past and recognizes you, and you get down, and even when your world's falling apart, you get down and you pull out a headband and you give this headband to this kid. And it's like, that's you. And that's the you I don't like. People say you're a great guy and you do all of these great things, but like, they just don't know the depth. Like, you, in your most agonizing moments, made somebody else's day. And like, that is who you are. And that's what I really want people to know about you and to take away from this is you're resilient, you're incredibly strong, and you just keep growing. And so thank you for opening up. I know that's tough. I have you through so many emotional things. Thank you for hanging in there with me. I want to close with 2 things. The first thing, we started this whole conversation talking about like the end of 2020. It sounded like at the time, lonely, depressed. You look at the book, I don't know, there were a lot of hints of self-loathing. Am I picking up on something different, or was that kind of the vibe?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. One, do you still carry that?
I don't think so anymore.
So what would 2025 Dan say to 2020 Dan? And the reason I'm making you say this on air is because I think there are a lot of people that resonate with 2020 Dan, but will be able to go to 2025 Dan. So what would you say to that person now?
Oh man. I think I'd probably start off by saying, don't give up. I think that's the first thing that comes to mind is like, just don't ever give up. And I think the second thing that came to mind after you asked that question was whatever your dreams are, and I'm not articulating this the right way, but like whatever your dreams are, to like still dream it. I think a lot of times, a lot of bad or sad things happen in our lives, and like it just kills a lot of our dreams. And I think for me, holding on to that, like it almost pushed me even more to like lean into trying to make those things happen. Like even through all of that, like it was almost like a driving factor, I guess. That makes sense. Absolutely. A lot of the things that you tried and you failed, you carried pieces of that with you, right? Yeah. Yeah. And totally. It grew to the next thing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead. I think that's, one of the things I wish I touched on earlier, like everything with the art business and like the old embarrassing like vlog channel that I had. It's one of those things where like I'm glad I went through it, and like I'm glad I did that, because like I learned so much from it now that I'm on the outside of it, that I think if I didn't do it, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. So like even though it felt kind of fake or imposter going through it, I've learned so much from it that I now use in this platform or like in my, photos and storytelling there. So it's all part of that journey, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's no wasted action as long as you keep moving, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Dan, it has been an honor to watch you grow, to be your partner, to go through hell with you and back. Thank you for letting me be part of that journey. I don't have a question of someone else has asked you a question. So I do have a question. What is one question you wish I would have asked you during this time?
Oh, man. Where can people buy my book? I'm kidding.
Right behind me.
Yeah. No. I don't think there's a question that I wish you would have asked. I'm glad I didn't know going into this, like what questions you were going to ask. Like I kind of had an idea, obviously talking about like my mom and the journey of that. Cause I don't think I've let a lot of that out. And then like, obviously everything with last week, with my grandpa and the book launch, like I kind of speculated where you're going with that, but I think it was nice to not know what was coming so I could, be authentic, I guess. Like not try to think about my answers too much to polish it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It was being authentic, not rehearsed.
Yeah. So I hope people that are listening, that are still listening at this point, really realize that like I did not know a single question that was coming my way. So that was really important to me.
That's great. No, I think you can tell how I jumped all over the place. So thanks for hanging in there with me. Any final words before we close out?
No, just what I say every week. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Shellda Podcast, and I'll catch you next time.
That.
See ya.
That's it. We're done.